monthly, and they take care of these problems.
You got it. Well, I don't make my. We're live, Ron, by the way. So you guys hooked up to your channel?
Yeah, it says that the channel. It says up here.
What
yes,
is it?
You
only,
are live.
Only $300 a month or something?
No, it's less than that.
Less than the $150 a month? What is it?
No, it's a couple $100 a year.
Couple $100? No, for
year.
us, for what's her name?
That's for tech security.
Yeah, tech security.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
I need to get into it. But are you live on your channel?
Yep, I'm live.
Okay, guys, we are live in charge. Let me just do some real fast maintenance. Been rough for all of us. A lot of issues, trials for all of us. So you guys know now that they deleted my WordPress. Let me just show them that. We're gonna let you take it away. My WordPress. So I started a new blog. Where do I go to find it? Okay, hold on. Okay, folks, this was my blog.
Can you see?
Yeah. No.
It's gone.
Why?
Wake up, she's gone.
Make sure that you have to go to the right thumbnail. Hold on. Yep.
See, answeringislamblog.wordpress.com is no longer available. Ha, ha, ha! Hold on, brother. Let me just tell them what happened, because this happened last night. Right after I finished the stream, about 15 minutes later, I got a notification. So, guys, it's gone. It says this lie: your site has been suspended from WordPress.com for violating the terms of service. I don't know how. If you believe this was done in error, which it was, I sent several emails, no response. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone.
Can we see him?
Now, here's my new blog. I just set it up. I had to buy domain names. It's on Wix, but I misspelled my URL. It's supposed to be THEO, but it's THE, because, I'm illiterate like Muhammad. Just wanted them to know that, Walid. Now, before I do that, let me share some links here. Rumble, make Rumble great again. Okay, guys. Good to have the Shobat duo, father and son. It's been a long time coming. The last time you were on my channel was what, a year ago?
I think it was like 2 years ago or something.
That's 2 years ago. You're talking about, you had a book that you made available for everyone for free if they emailed you.
Yes.
Yeah, I still got to do some final touch-ups on it.
That's right.
But anybody who wants it, I can gather their email and send it to them.
So we're going to be giving out their email in a minute. Now, Theodore has a YouTube channel. I mentioned it several times, so let's go to his channel. Let me show you what his channel is. He's now live streaming it there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got people watching.
Yes, right. We got it. That's here. And so as everyone can see, you're really onto this modern issue between Israel and Palestine. So here it is, guys. I will be putting this in the description box. Let me just share it on, because we're also streaming on Rumble. And he's now live streaming there. That's why it says he's live. We're also streaming. So there you go. See, that's him. That's on his channel. So guys, if you want to go there, go hit like. You can watch it from, it doesn't matter where you watch it. Just go there at least. Subscribe. Hit the like button. So today, we're going to talk about Israel, Palestine, the Bible, church history, you name it. Now, you guys need to share any links like slides or anything, or no?
No.
Right.
And I hope you could also interact with us, try to shoot our...
I don't know if I can.
Please do.
I'll do what I can, but Walid has been held these 2 weeks, and last night I've been spending like 2-3 hours trying to recover the 2,000 articles that I lost. 2,000.
I've been there. Been there a lot worse than your situation.
I know. Maybe we talk about it.
Yeah. I am yet to see an effective approach that deals with the question of Christian Zionism.
Yeah.
This is something that I think both me and you fell into that trap at one point in time in our life as a result of living in the United States. But this is not only a theological point of view. This is a matter that deals with biblical prophecies. And the idea that way that it works is by either chapter isolation, verse isolation, or word isolation. You know, if you look at Romans 9:6, it says, not all Israel who are descended from Israel. Question, what is this talking about? It's obviously the church. Not all Israel are descendants from Israel. So if we ask the question, how does St. Paul define the church in this phrase? There's only one way to go: Israel. There's no other way to define the church.
Yep.
And so the way Christian Zionism works is that it mentally deletes not from not all Israel are descendants of Israel, where only the genetic descendants of Israel becomes the only Israel. What happens to the other Israel who are the true spiritual descendants? They are no longer in existence in the Old Testament. In fact, the way to combat Christian Zionism is to ask anyone who adheres to this theology a question. Show me the church in the Old Testament. What they will begin to do is to share messianic prophecies galore, which we find in the Old Testament, over 300 prophecies about the Messiah. That's when you stop them and say, I am not talking about messianic prophecies. I am talking about the church in these biblical prophecies. If you can't find the church in these biblical prophecies, then you have no part in it. That means you are not part of the church. So that creates a major domino effect. If the church is not in any of these prophecies, there will be no longer any use for phrases like, I will build my church. Where is it? How can Christ make an established church without having a foundation in the prophets? It becomes an impossible task. But the domino effect goes further, because taking the word not out from not all Israel are descendants of Israel is the same trick of one serpent who told the woman, did God say really not to eat of the fruit? So, in other words, even the Almighty becomes a different God, where God is not author of confusion, but he is the author of peace. He no longer becomes the author of peace, but becomes the author of confusion. Peace will no longer take effect in the mind of the Christian Zionist, because the suffering that is caused by the Zionist state that he supported to birth is now committing genocide, not just in Gaza, but now Syrian must kill Syrian, Egyptian must kill Egyptian, Iraqi must kill Iraqi to establish the greater Israel. The question becomes, is where do we find this greater Israel anywhere in the New Testament? The only great I find in the New Testament regarding a land is in the Apocalypse, chapter 11, verse 8. The great city, Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified.
Walid,
Yes.
you jumped ahead, brother. I've been waiting for you to. I wanted to. You backtrack, brother. I know you're excited to get into the material. Backtrack so people know your background. You went right into the material. I know you're excited. By the way, Theodore, I'm not politically correct, so you got some trolls in your comments. So if I cuss out their mothers, don't take it personally.
No, I don't care.
Because you have someone who's called Improve because he wants to improve his mother's status from being a Shia
I got rid of them.
Yeah, Shia prostitute to become a Sunni prostitute. So, but Walid, before we jump in, backtrack, because you're Palestinian.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to let them know about you, Palestinian. Why?
Because I started looking at the biblical text at 5th.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I want them to understand your background why this relevant? Because first of all, for people who don't know you,
No problem. You'll be the psychiatrist. I'll be your first
I
patient.
will. Yes, right. I will first ask you the question so they can see your journey.
Yeah,
You
lay
you
down and
were,
start from the beginning.
yeah, but you were
Yeah, I started looking at the biblical text at 5th grade. I got my first Arabic Bible in 5th grade, came in the mail. The first thing I got in the mail was a Arabic Bible. They said, write, people in the school said, write something called the Voice of Healing in Jerusalem and ask them for a Bible. They send you one. And I did. And I got an Arabic Bible. And I poured into the book of Daniel and the Apocalypse of St. John heavily since I was in 5th grade. A lot of the things I studied, I could not comprehend. Of course, you're still at 5th grade. And I recall those days I grew up to high school and I wanted to thwart the peace talks between Egypt and Israel. And then I got involved with a terrorist organization. And I got a bomb and I planted it to destroy the peace talks between Israel and Egypt at the time. And it exploded in Bethlehem. CNN, of course, made a whole thing about it that they could never find a bombing that happened at Manger Square where Christ was born. The idea was blow up a bomb at Manger Square right around Christmas, a couple days before Christmas. And there's people from all over the world. And so CNN later on did a whole story on it, claiming that there was never a bombing in Manger Square until we pulled the archives. The bombing that I planted in Manger Square was all over the media. New York Times, Washington Post, the whole world talked about it. In fact, I dare anybody to question that thing. I could show them even old articles from the archives. Bomb explodes at Manger Square. So I came to the United States at 33 years. I started looking at the scripture again, and I wanted to join a church. I left Islam. That's when I met you. I left Islam and joined a Baptist church. Of course, Sunday school. I was so excited about the Bible and all these things. I wanted to learn more. So we end up in Sunday school where they equate Israel with the state of Israel. So I said, wow, this has been my problem all these years. So the state of Israel must be God's thing. And so you begin to support the state of Israel. And then I became a public figure. I went all over the world, authored several books. I remember you, and I think we began the first blog in the world. It was called Answering Islam. Of course, I was more bent on being towards, being pro-Israel in those days.
That's right.
Until the day Theodore began to look a lot heavily into history. When you look into history, you begin to recognize and realize the Apostolic Succession Church was definitely a different church than what we understood from the Baptists. A completely different theology, completely different way of looking at history, at looking at the text, at looking at the allegoric way of interpreting the scriptures, where, it's in the prophets, God says, I speak in parables. This is, by the way, he doesn't say through the prophets, I said parables. Rather, he says, through the prophets, I speak in parables. So the parabolic language of the text in the Bible and the prophets is designed in a way where if you, as a Baptist Christian or evangelical Christian, begin to read it in this hyper-literalist mode, will end up gaining an optical illusion, a complete opposite of this message. For example, you take a look at Apocalypse 11 and take a rod as a reed and measure the temple of God. They will read this as there's going to be an architect with a measuring tape is about to measure the building of a Jewish temple. But that's not what the text is saying, because, for example, in Daniel, God says, Daniel explains the writing on the wall. God has measured thy kingdom. Did God send an architect to measure a place to rebuild Babylon? Or did he send a sword called Cyrus to end Babylon? So to measure is not understood literally. It is allegoric expression. For example, also in Zechariah chapter 2, measuring Jerusalem. They think, oh, wow, look, and they're going to rebuild Jerusalem, and a Zionist state. He's putting that Jerusalem he's talking about in Zechariah 2 in the land of the north. This is not in Judea, in the land of the south. This is in Europe. How do we know that? Jeremiah chapter 16, he talks about the diaspora of the Jews. After the destruction of the temple, God says in Jeremiah 16, I'm going to send you to a land your fathers did not know, in the land of the north. That was Europe. And so, how could that prophecy be speaking about the exile to Babylonia or to exile to Persia, which their fathers knew? Abraham knew Babylonia. The Jews knew Persia. They've been there as captives. And so this is a land your fathers did not know. That's the diaspora. So the question really hedges on this land of the north. Why is God measuring a Jerusalem in the land of the north, and he tells them to escape? You know, the idea of come out of her, my people, encompasses much. And so the land of the north, this is a land that still remains uncharted, undefined, and undiscovered. You could spend the years of your time looking at all the scholars to see how do they define this land of the north. But the land of the north is divided into three substructures. The land of the north encompasses the centers of the Roman Empire, divided into two spheres, an Eastern Empire and a Western Empire. So when we talk about St. John, who talks about mystical Babylon, or he talks about the beast and all these different things, or Daniel talks about this beastly figure, and all these allegorical usages that speak of the Roman Empire, which has been really the dominant view, whether you talk to Catholic or Orthodox or even Protestant, that is a composite of the Roman Empire. But that Roman Empire was divided into two spheres: Eastern, Byzantium, and Western Europe, Rome. But there is another sphere for the land of the north that exists to the north of the Roman Empire. That would be the Slavic world, Russia. So unless somebody understands that the land of the north is broken into these three spheres, attempting to understand these biblical prophecies will be a useless project. The other issue that needs to be clarified when we study these prophecies is Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. Mystical Babylon the Great is composed of three. No matter how much time you spend looking at the text where Babylon is mentioned, you have three that are in this mystical Babylon. In fact, St. John divides it in that earthquake into three parts. The first part of mystical Babylon is Jerusalem, the Zionist world order, called the mother of harlots. And then the second one is Arabia. In fact, When we look at, let's say, Apocalypse 14, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. There's two fallens. The only place in the entire Bible where you find Babylon is fallen is in Isaiah chapter 21. And what do you find in Isaiah 21? Isaiah laments. He calls this Babylon as my people. My people are under the threshing floor. I tell you what I heard from the Lord Almighty. And then he weeps and he's in agony to see the Jews being called Babylon and are threshed under the floor. And also in that same prophecy, the burden against Arabia. Arabia becomes another Babylon that is in the southern hemisphere. So the southern hemisphere has two Babylons. The northern hemisphere, Western Europe, is daughter Babylon. And so those three composite three Babylons, and the land of the north composites three powers, two of which are unholy. Eastern Roman Empire has been given to the Turks, who adhere to the religion of Arabia. That's a key. In fact, when we read the Psalms, for example, Psalm 120, verse 5, the lamenter laments and he says, though I sojourn in Meshach, I dwell in the tents of Qidar. The Western scholar looks at tents of Qidar, Arabia, and he thinks these are tents made of camel hair. But tents, parabolically, are tabernacles. In fact, if you look at Genesis, Japheth dwells in the tents of Shem. In other words, Shem, the Jewish world order, is no more. The religion is no more. The tents, the tabernacles that were intended for Judah, he lost them. The one who moves into those tabernacles will be Japheth, the Roman Empire. Had Israel studied just that one verse, they would have prevented themselves from making a revolt against Rome. And so tents are tabernacles. This becomes significant. Why? Because there is a question that no Zionist or Christian Zionist was able to answer. That question comes from God Almighty. The question of Ezekiel 38:39. I'm sure you studied that prophecy. It is about a war of Gog and Magog. They invade the mountains of Israel and they fall on the mountains of Israel. You think in your mind that this event is going to be Russia invading the state of Israel and are destroyed on the mountains of Israel. By far, the reverse is absolutely the truth. Gog is not invading the state of Israel at that point. He does invade the state of Israel, he destroys it. So the question becomes, why is it in Isaiah that we find the state of Israel destroyed with Arabia? By the way, those are two strange bedfellows that are collaborating together these days with the UAE, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. And how is it destroyed by Persia? Because it says in Isaiah, Elam, and from the south, the desert, which is Yemen. Those two are the main regional enemies of both Arabia and Israel. How is it that in Isaiah 21, Israel is destroyed, yet in Ezekiel 38, Israel is victorious? The problem with all these prophecies, where we find a destroyed Israel and a victorious Israel, is very simple. these do not identify the difference between the descendants of Israel versus not all who descend from Israel are, So in other words, the church is victorious, yet the descendants who remain outside the church, insist on the genetic Israel, are destroyed. How do we know that? There is a question in Ezekiel 38:17. Now, this is a question God asks. That question sat dormant for over 2,000 years, with no scholar has ever answered the question. What does the question say in Ezekiel 38:17? God confronts Gog with a question. He says, "Are you not the one who I spoke through the prophets and the servants of Israel in those days that you will come against them?" The word prophets is in the plural form. But in Ezekiel, or in the Old Testament prophets as a whole, Gog is only mentioned in one book, Ezekiel. Did God make an error? Or do we not understand that Gog has other nicknames besides the name Gog? What are those nicknames of Gog? Where are they? That homework takes years. So the question that no scholar can escape is this one. Where is Gog in the book of Daniel? Keep in mind, if you ask the Christian Zionist, Gog is in the prophets. Where else is Gog besides the book of Ezekiel? Well, that's when they are stuck, because there's only one Gog in the New Testament, and that is in Apocalypse chapter 20. But that Gog in chapter 20 of the Apocalypse, they reject being the same Gog of Ezekiel 38. What happens to the millennial theory that Christ is going to reign for 1,000 years? It's out the window. In other words, we no longer, as apostolic succession Christians, have to argue that, hey, wait a minute, the church long time ago, made the millennial theory as a heresy. Well, we don't believe in those, church fathers. We only follow the scriptures. So if you follow the scriptures, God himself condemns the 1,000-year reign, because now you have to configure that you misunderstood the whole thing about the 1,000-year reign. That question in Ezekiel actually destroys not just Protestantism, but rabbinic Judaism and all the isms and all these crazy theories. Why? Because now you have to find Gog in the book of Daniel. This northern Gog in the book of Daniel, and no matter what caliber is the scholar, has no other choice but to find Gog in Daniel chapter 11, verse 21 to 45. It's the only place you can find. It's not the only place, but it's the main place to find the northern Gog in Daniel 11, verse 21 to 45. And by the way, it keeps from Daniel 11:21, he, till the end. It has no stop. Now, this becomes a key. Why? Because right after where Gog is talked about as king of the north in Daniel 11, the angel tells Daniel, this is sealed. This prophecy is sealed to the time of the end. If it's sealed to the time of the end, when knowledge increase, wow, that means knowledge, not knowledge in iPhones and technology, knowledge about understanding the mysteries of these prophecies. When that knowledge increases, then people will begin to understand them. Daniel himself asked the angel, what is the secret? What is the seal? And the angel told him, go your way, Daniel, for this is reserved for the time of the end. So if the seal of prophecy is reserved for the time of the end, how could the Protestant claim that he's been the main scholar that has been unlocking the prophecies of the Bible all these centuries, and laughs at the apostolic succession Christian because they don't really dig deep into these biblical prophecies because it's been designed for the time of the end? So what do we find in Daniel 11? In Daniel 11, we find an amazing story. We no longer can view Daniel 11, 21 to 45 as the ancient Antiochus Epiphanes. Did Epiphanes not fulfill these prophecies? He did, but as a type. The Epiphanes ruled from Syria, not the same landmass as his father Antiochus III ruled, which encompassed big parts of Anatolia. Don't forget, Ezekiel 38 says that Gog, he is the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And by the way, it doesn't even matter if you want to say chief prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. I'll explain that in a minute. Meshech and Tubal, they say, is Moscow and Tobolsk in Russia. It's a joke. It's crazy. Meshech and Tubal is Mushki and Tabalani in Asia Minor, Turkey. Ezekiel contemporaneously used a figure of his time, or before his time, was Gugu of Luddu, Gaigez of Lydia. Lydia is not in Russia. Lydia is in Asia Minor. And so this whole time, the scriptures is addressing the eastern flank of the Roman Empire. Remember, the Zionist Christian isolates Ezekiel 38, 39 as a separate prophecy before the Battle of Armageddon, because he is confronted with what all scholars agree. Armageddon is a war with what used to composite the Roman Empire. And so now this Roman Empire is the Eastern Roman Empire. Why is God focused so much on the East more than the West? That's the whole subject to itself. So now we track for a first time in history and begin to understand that from his base must be Meshech and Tubal. When Daniel says from his base or his estate, he will honor a God of fortresses, a God who his fathers did not know. It's a singular God. Wow, Islam. So he is chief prince of Meshech. Though I sojourn in Meshech, I dwell in the tents of Qidar. Now we know that Arabia's religion has conquered Byzantium. And now we know where the focus is. Now we come to many things, many things. Daniel in 11:41, this king of the north, Gog, conquers the beautiful land. No scholar disagrees. The beautiful land is Judea, Israel. The state of Israel is conquered. Keep in mind, in our mind, we think, wait a minute here, Walid. Doesn't Gog fall on the mountains of Israel? Mountains is not hills. Mountain is a nation. Mountains of Israel are several nations to the north of Gog. How do we know that? It's to the north of Byzantium. How do we know that? Because by the time this northern Gog completes his expeditions in the south from 1121 to 1143, he conquers Israel in 1141. Keep in mind, that chapter in Daniel is the only place in the entire Bible that gives us the sequence of events in sequential order. And then the seal is set. In 1141, Israel is destroyed. So now we know Iran and Turkey destroy Israel. How then does he fall in the mountains of Israel if he continues? In 1142 and 43, where he combats Egypt, begins to conquer the Middle East, and then he enters into Libya. He doesn't conquer Libya, North Africa. They accept him. But wait a minute, this Kush and Fut, Sudan and North Africa, those are in his coalition in Ezekiel 38. That coalition cannot happen until after Israel is conquered in 1141. Now, after his southern expeditions in the south, remember, he's in Turkey, Lydia, he's going to the south, the Levant, northern Iraq. Turkey begins to take over the Middle East, and in the process it conquers Israel, and Israel is no more. So now Gog comes from your place. It says very clearly, when it comes to the story of Gog and Magog, God left no stone unturned. He made sure that we understand it. When Gog invades, you shall come from your place from the far north. Is he going south? No. You will go up, he says, north. Even in Ezekiel 38, he's going north. How do we know that? Because by the time he's done with his southern expedition, read it. You get to 1144 and 45. Gog gets bad news, horrifying news from his east and his north. East of Turkey is Armenia. North of Turkey, north of Byzantium, is what gave birth. Byzantium gave birth, the mother, to Russia. North of Byzantium. And he calls it the beautiful, the glorious holy mountain, the glorious holy kingdom to the north. So north of Byzantium is Georgia, the Slavic world. You get into Russia, you get to Crimea. That's where the bad, horrifying news comes from Gog. So what happens here? In other words, we begin to understand that the war or Armageddon is when the West fails to conquer Russia via Ukraine. And they try, they fail. Eventually, they will feed Turkey to Russia. So Turkey enters into bear territory, is consumed by the bear, and spat out to the southern parts of Turkey. And so now we know the bad, and then it says in the last verse in chapter 11 of Daniel, and he shall come to his end and no one will help him. That's when he comes to his end. So how does he fall in the mountains of Israel? He doesn't fall in the mountains of Israel. Byzantium, Armenia, all these regions, Russia, these are the mountains, the nations of Israel. God promised Abraham and Jacob to do what? To spawn nations of Israel. So these are not the 12 tribes. This is what Christ promised, to spawn, the whole thing. It's promised through Christ. So this is the spiritual birth of an Israel that these people restrict to genetic Israel. So this whole genetic Israel is really farce. So now we come to the issue of my land and how he restores his land. In Isaiah chapter 8, one of the names of Gog is the Assyrian. The Assyrian, he invades through your land, O Emmanuel. Who is the Emmanuel? Last I checked, who the Emmanuel is, Christ. So what is the land of Emmanuel? Is the lands of Christ only Judea? The lands of Christ encompasses much more than this minuscule microcosmic Zionist view. It encompasses the church where the carpenter spread Christianity. So those lands are chiseled away slowly in history, where God says he will restore. Are we still on? Oh, okay, we're still on. Are we there?
Yeah, you're there. Yeah, you're there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So take a look, let's say, for example, at the shortest sermon Christ made. He went into a synagogue in Isaiah chapter 61. And he read the first verse and a half, and he says, this has been fulfilled in your hearing. What did he leave out? He left out the day of vengeance, and he left out to restore what has been destroyed throughout the generations. This is not talking about the destruction of Israel. This is not talking about the cataclysm in the ends of days, which is only 2-3 years. This is talking about the slow chiseling away of his kingdom here, of entire generations, generation after generation after generation. The Ottoman chiseled away what was the carpenter's land, his territory. He's going to restore all of this, is what he's talking about. Finally, we begin to discover the meek shall inherit the earth. He doesn't just inherit little minuscule Judea. Judea is part of his kingdom, no problem. The other thing we begin to discover is that you have no mention in the Old Testament anywhere where God commands Jews to enter this land without repentance. In fact, the idea of Jews entering this land without repentance has been prophesied, and God condemns it, and he destroys that state in several places in the scripture. And this is where it becomes confusing for the novice, because you read prophecies, it shows, let's say, Micah 5, God destroys the fortresses of Israel, and it looks like Israel is defeated. And you find all these prophecies about the defeat of the state of Israel. Then you find a conquering Israel is not the same Israel. And so the conquering Israel is the church. In fact, right there in Daniel 12, where the seal is put, right there, he says it right there in verse 1. What does it say? And maybe I should do what you do to your audience. Maybe have Sam, can you read 12:1? What does it say? Go ahead, read it.
I wish I could. I don't have the Bible up.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
I can bring it up if you want, but I've been too busy. I've been too busy cussing out 3/4 of Theodore's chat numbers because your son Theodore doesn't have moderation, so people are talking about anything but the subject. So I've been too busy cussing them up, but I can bring up the Bible. I may have to pay Theodore to make me a mod so we can clean the rats out because they're not listening. Theodore, how much you want me to pay you?
Cleaning the rats.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, you got people who are manifesting in his comment section. They're not listening. So
yeah, I know. This is America. What else can we do?
Well, you can do what the Zionists do. Shut down websites.
Yeah. Okay, I have it in front of me. I can read it for you if you want.
Okay, good.
Okay. And there will be a time of distress, such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, that is the Hebrews, everyone who is what? Found written in the book will escape. The only ones who will escape are the ones what? Found written in the book. Of the Hebrews whose names are not written in the book, what happens to them? They're destroyed. So it's very clear. There is another diaspora of the Jews. In fact, let's take some of these favorite prophecies the Christian Zionists use to claim that God is going to establish a state of Israel. It's not by God's command. This is by man's effort God rejects. Let's take a look at Isaiah 37, 31, 32, and I'm going to read it. And the remnant that is escaped. The what? Remnant. What happened to the rest? The remnant that is escaped of the house of who? Judah. Shall again take root downwards. He flees south, but it doesn't do well for him. It bear fruit. In other words, it will only bear fruit, spiritual fruit that is, upward, north. For out of Jerusalem, a remnant will go. Out of Jerusalem, a remnant Jews will escape. And out of Mount Zion, survivors. Oh, wow. So out of Jerusalem, some Hebrews, decent Jews, because me and you know there are many decent Jews that me and you even speak to. Not all Jews are bad. There are many decent Jews. So God has mercy on the decent Jews, and they bear fruit where? Upwards, north. Why north? Did you know that in the entire prophets, you could spend the years I did, you will never find any holy status to a nation in the south. Every holy status given in the prophets is north. God preserves a nation north of Byzantium to rescue the remnants and to also defeat Gog and restore the carpenter's kingdom. So, for out of Jerusalem a remnant will go, they will leave Jerusalem, and out of Mount Zion survivors, the zeal of the Lord of armies will perform this. It's a miracle. We find this in Obadiah. But on Mount Zion, there will be those who escape, and it will be holy. That's the only ones that will be holy, confirming Daniel. The ones, their names written in the book, will be holy. Those are the only ones that God will rescue. So the remnants escape out of Jerusalem and head to a northerly Mount Zion. And then from holy Mount Zion in the north will come the survivors. And then they will go to the new Jerusalem, not the old Jerusalem. Nowhere in the prophets does this homecoming of the repentant Jews is in old Jerusalem, where you have falafel stands and hummus stands. This new Jerusalem, no man can fathom. If I can tell you that the new Jerusalem has hummus and falafel, I must have fathomed that Jerusalem. So it is impossible to argue that this Jerusalem they're talking about is that old city of Jerusalem as it stands. How God is going to orchestrate a different Jerusalem, do I have the answer? Do you, Sam Shamoun, have the answer? When God himself says, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, neither has it entered the heart of man what God has prepared for the ones who love him. So this is a Jerusalem no man fathoms. Okay. So the Zionists, to make their outlandish claims, must view the text microcosmically, where a mount or a mountain should not be looked at as a little hill. It's a nation, a kingdom, a power. Is all the survivors of Israel going to huddle over a little hill called Mount Zion? Are you kidding me? What is this?
What's what?
This guy here.
That's just an ad.
Can you-
The Bible Gateway? That's from Shamoun's
So
page.
he's distracting you too, huh, Walid? Theodore,
Yeah, I know.
Walid, we'll pay you for moderation, dude. You just
So-
said that for Allah.
So this is in northern Zion. And by the way, it's not Zion, it's Sion. Zion is a Germanic way. But if you look at the text, it's Zion, come from Saun. That's a whole different topic. Ya bint as-Saun. If I tell you Ya bint as-Saun, you know what that means, the virgin. So Mount Zion is looking at the church that remained virgin, that did not commit prostitution, that remained steadfast till the end. This is the story of Joseph, by the way. So the escape to this northerly Mount Zion where they convert, it says right there in the Psalm, Psalm 48, the daughters of Judah will praise God during those judgments. Where are the daughters of Judah hanging out during those judgments on Zionist Israel? They're hanging out in Russia. How do we know that? Because the seal in Daniel disclosed it. Where 44, 45, and Daniel 11, it calls it the glorious holy mountain, the holy kingdom. And by the way, he calls Judea the beautiful land is not a compliment. It's an insult. Lot, when he sat with Abraham, he says, I want Sodom. It's a beautiful land as the garden of God. So Sodom was called the beautiful land. That's why he never called Judea the holy land. This matches exactly what St. John says. Sodom and Egypt where also their Lord was crucified. And St. John made sure we understand that one. Where our Lord was crucified is no question in Jerusalem. And so now we begin to understand where this holy city that is trampled, is invaded. So where is this northerly Mount Zion? It occurs 18 times. We find a reference to Mount Zion in Psalm 48, where the daughters of Judah, quote, shall rejoice because of your judgments. Psalm 48:11. Where are these Jewish girls hanging out when these judgments commence? The answer is in the same psalm. Mount Zion in the far north. Wow. So you can't say, oh, this is only one verse. That one verse dictates all the other verses about Mount Zion. And by the way, this is confirmed by the prophet Jeremiah. In Jeremiah 3:15, what does he say? And I will give you shepherds, priests, according to my heart, which shall feed you, the Hebrews, the remnants who escape, with what? Knowledge and understanding. What knowledge? What understanding? Let's continue the prophecy. To claim that Jeremiah 3 is the return of the Jewish exiles in 1948 has a major dilemma. Look what it says. In those days, the house of Judah will walk with the house of Israel, and they will come together from the land of the north to the land I gave to your fathers as an inheritance. When will this happen? In those days. Is this 1948? How could that be? Because the prophecy says, at that time, they shall call Jerusalem the falafel stands? No, the throne of the Lord. That's the new Jerusalem. And all nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem. Neither shall they walk anymore after the imagination of their evil heart. They will never make a state again the way they did. They'll never do all the stuff they did. They never do all the killing they did. But this happens at that time. The repentance happens before they enter the promised land. Here as well, we have, Israel and Judah. And so now Judah and Israel becomes one stick. Now we come to the story of Joseph and Where is
Walid, 1 second, brother.
yes?
Theodore, if your comments are out of control, I'm going to discontinue the stream on your YouTube because it's ridiculous. They're cussing people out, insulting people. So I'm going to give 5 minutes. If you don't have any moderation, I'm going to remove it. And I'm just going to let it stream here, and you can then download it later. Because you're letting people go amok, mock, swear. And no one's listening to Walid except my channel. They are, because in my channel I block people, so they're listening to Walid. But on your stream, it's chaos, man. So I don't know if you want them to learn. You got to get moderation, brother.
He's right.
All right.
So do something.
All right.
Because Boxer here is upset that his mother's still doing muta with the Shia, pimping her.
Yeah, I don't like to even read those comments. They just ramble on. Nobody wants to learn anything. And
no, Walid, that's why my channel, I got like 20,000 mods. We get rid of rats. Only those who want to learn. And my channel, they're loving what you're saying. But on his channel, it's nothing but trolls and scum, just attacking and mocking and ridiculing.
How do you get rid of them?
You got to have a mod to block. They almost called one sister, one Muslim bastard wanted to call her the cunt word.
Okay,
No,
yeah.
Let me see here.
So you gotta do something, brother, because I'm gonna have to delete it because you can then upload it later.
Yeah, you're right.
Like here, like this guy Ricky, because he's upset when his mother hit on me. He said, "I'm not Muslim, I'm not Shia. I don't prostitute women," because he wanted me to be his daddy. So anyway,
notice how they all shut up.
Yeah, see, because they know I'm serious. That's how I run the show. I don't let them bark. So you're gonna get a mod, brother? Because you even had some...
I moderate my own comments though. I don't have any mods.
Okay, well you got to block them. You're on the phone. Look and block, because you had 2 Jews guys blaspheming Jesus, calling him JC and cussing him out. And I'm sitting there waiting to see if you're going to say something.
I've never seen this Jewish guy before.
Yeah, there was a Badunaka and some other bastard. Anyway,
I think it's Muslim.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. If you go on my channel, they're all listening to you and they're loving it, even on Rumble.
His name is Banduk.
Bandunika and some guy Yabal.
You know what banduk means, right?
Well, you know.
So anyway,
go ahead. Now continue.
So in Jeremiah 3, he gives you the right formula. He gives you the sequence of events, how Judah, basically the remnant Jews, escape Zionist Israel, and how they finally come to the New Jerusalem. And so we find much more than this. Even if you take, let's say, chapter 36, where it says, I will give you a new heart and put new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. All this is talking about the redemption of remnant Jews. This is all these events about the homecoming cannot happen unless the Jews, the remnant Jews, repent first. So this did not occur in 1948 or during Perestroika or in 1967. None of these prophecies fit the formula the Zionists paint. We have 36, Son of Man, when the house of Israel was living on their own land, they defiled it by their ways and their deeds. Their way before me was like the uncleanliness of a woman in her impurity. Therefore, I poured out my wrath on them for the blood which they had shed. Blood? Who's shedding blood? Obviously, it's talking about the blood they're shedding even today. In fact, even if you take a look at Ezekiel 39:23, the very prophecy the Zionists use, supposedly, that Netanyahu defeats Russia. Are you familiar with that prophecy, right, Sam?
Yeah.
That Israel defeats Russia. In that same prophecy, what does it say? It says, the nation, read the chapter Ezekiel 39:23.
You want me to bring it up?
The nations, sure. The nations will know that the house of Israel went into what? exile for their what? Wrongdoing, because they were disloyal to me and I hid my face from them. So I handed them over to their adversaries. Who's that? Gog and Magog, Iran. And all of them fell by the sword. How good is your math, Sam? You good in math?
Well, I had a hard time in kindergarten. I don't know.
What is all of them?
All of them means 2 minus 8.
All of them fell by the sword. So here you have even Ezekiel 38, 39, compatible with Daniel, compatible with also Ezekiel chapter 15. In Ezekiel chapter 15, it says, let me pull that one out.
As you do that, Theodore, you see I've been putting on a screen for you for 5 minutes, and the guy's manifesting. Look at his comment, buddy. And then he's manifesting like his own mother. So he just told someone, take my dick out of your mouth.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
he's still commenting, brother. Brother, I swear, I'm going to give you another minute to manage it. If not, I got to disconnect. So don't take it
I got
personally.
rid of that guy.
yeah.
No, okay, well, he just commented again right after that. But anyway, brother.
Yeah.
I got rid of him.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So now we understand the right formula. Now we come to Ezekiel chapter 15. Very important prophecy. Look what it says. 15 verses 6 to 8, if you want to pull that out.
Yes.
15 verses 6 to 8.
And you said Ezekiel, right?
Ezekiel 15, 6 to 8.
Okay, I'll open up the entire chapter. Hold on. Let's go to 6 to 8. Okay, right here.
Yes. What does it say? Therefore, thus says the Lord God, like the wood of the vine among the trees of the forest, which I have given to the fire for fuel, so I will give up the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I will set my face against them. They will go out from what? One fire, but another fire shall devour them. So you have the first Holocaust. There's a second Holocaust that this time will happen in Jerusalem. My gosh, I remember when I was a kid, we used to go to the YMCA. And every time the bus passes by a certain area, the bus driver says, this is where the Jews will be gathered and burned in Jerusalem. I used to like, what the hell is he talking about? He seems to understand these prophecies more than me by being taught by most likely, priests and things of that sort, from others. But, there's a place called Tophet, and that's where the burning takes place. And so this is definitely speaking of another Holocaust. And if in doubt, Ezekiel, this same burning is described in Ezekiel 22 verses 19 to 24. He describes the coming Holocaust. He says, you have become waste metal. You want to pull it up? 22, Ezekiel 22, 19 to 24.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will read my version.
What version are you reading?
I use all kinds of.
Yeah, I can use whatever you want. It's up to you. But
yeah, I don't know which one I have here, but I have, I usually go to the Arabic, Hebrew, and I see the best one, and I use that one. He says, you have become waste metal. Therefore, behold, I am going to gather you into the midst of Jerusalem as they gather silver, bronze, iron, lead, and tin into the smelting furnace to blow fire on it in order to melt it. So I will gather you in my anger and in my wrath, and I will place you there in Jerusalem and melt you. And I will gather you, there's your regathering of the Jews, and blow on you with the fire of my wrath. and you will be melted in the midst of it as silver is melted in the furnace. So you will be melted in the midst of it, and you will know that I am the Lord, have poured out my wrath on you. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, say to her, you are a land that is not clean or rained on in the day of indignation. Wow. Count 1. Verse 22, 22, 26. They have done violence. Count 2, quote, her leaders within her are like wolves tearing the prey by shedding blood and destroying lives in order to make dishonest profit. 22, verse 7. Count 3, practiced extortion. This is not my words, that's the text. Practiced extortion and committed robbery. 22:9. Count 4, they have oppressed the poor and the needy. 22:9. Count 5, have oppressed the stranger, the non-Jews, without justice. What we see happening to olive groves by the hoodlums and these, settlers. They burn holy olive. Sam, me and you know, olive is holy.
Yep.
They burn the holy olives. They steal the holy olives from poor people. Count 6, falsely interpreting the signs by, quote, saying, this is what the Lord God says when the Lord has not spoken, interpreting the biblical prophecies falsely. All this seems to fit the daily headlines me and you watch, including how these falsely interpret the prophets. Even Amos 1 verse 6 prophesied about the offenses of Gaza. Wow. Quote, they led into exile an entire population. They're going to take the people of Gaza and throw them to Jordan. Israel will throw the Palestinians out of Gaza to Jordan and will rebuild it, but the outcome will be dismal. The prophets foresaw the future news headlines, and if my interpretation are unconvincing, perhaps Isaiah can clarify this confusion. Look what he says, Isaiah. Listen to this, Isaiah 48 verses 1 and 2. 48, 1 and 2. Listen to this, you descendants of Yaqub. Who are those? The Jews. You who are called by my name of Israel. Wow, you call yourselves Israel. And come from the line of Judah. You call yourselves Israel, yet you're from Judah. Okay? You who take oaths in the name of the Lord and invoke the God of Israel, but not in truth or righteousness. You who call yourselves citizens of the holy city and claim to rely on the God of Israel. Me and you don't have to refute Christian Zionism. Just read the text. You have neither heard nor understood. My gosh. Isaiah 48 verse 8. Verse 9 says, for my own name's sake, I delay my wrath. For the sake of my praise, I hold it back from you, so as not to destroy you completely. That means he takes a remnant and the rest are destroyed. It is not a complete destruction. I don't understand the Christian Zionists. They keep thinking that apostolic succession Christians believe in there is no redemption of remnant Judah. We all believe and we all know there is a redemption of remnant Judah to the church. What is the big fuss all about? Notice carefully, Sam. These hoodlums are of Judah, yet by calling themselves Israel is a case of stolen identity. By calling themselves citizens of the holy city, Isaiah foretells the illegitimate establishment of the state. No one can call Sodom a holy city. This denouncement includes their oaths and their supposed reliance on God. Their claim of citizenship in the holy city is false. Besides denouncing their citizenship, even the name these Jews gave themselves, Israel, is illegitimate, unauthorized, barred, illegal, forbidden, unwarranted, and fraudulent. These stain the name of Israel. God even sends them this message: I delay my wrath so as not to destroy you completely. God saves a portion who joined the true Israel and then allows Gog to destroy the rest. That is, the Turks will destroy Israel. While Ezekiel 15 gives the judgment, that is the second Holocaust, the following chapter, Ezekiel 16, gives the reason. Jerusalem becomes a mother of Sodom. This is a parable no one understood. It is a similar parable to how St. John describes Jerusalem. If this parable is a historic event, when was Jerusalem judged for becoming a sister and a mother of Sodom? Here's what the prophecy says. Ezekiel 16, verse 2. Son of man, make known to Jerusalem her what? Abominations. And then he talks in verses 54 to 57. He says, however, I will restore the fortunes of Sodom and her daughters, and of Samaria and her daughters, and your fortunes, that is Jerusalem, along with them. There is the restoration of Jerusalem, which God mocks, so that you may bear your disgrace and be ashamed of all you have done in giving them, that is Sodom and Samaria, comfort. You gave this whole ideology about the homosexual, the LGBT, throughout this history. You gave them comfort. You're the ones that promoted homosexuality. By the way, the Holocaust happened after the Jews turned Berlin into the most elaborate Sodom the world has ever known. Berlin was turned, I mean, the Hirschfeld Library. Ted, you can talk about that. You know, what...
Yeah,
you know,
elaborate on that. You're saying Berlin was turned into...
you have the Hirschfeld Library. They were doing surgeries to change male sex to female. All this gender stuff was going on before the war.
Wow.
Were mostly Jews. They were there's a whole documentary you can watch. It shows how much the Jews really did in Berlin to... this is, by the way, is not an anti-Israel documentary. It's just a documentary on World War II and why Hitler was mad and why these books were burned. You know, the Hirschfeld Library, all these books that were burned. They were burned because they were all advancing homosexuality and all these things. So one can argue and say not everything Hitler did was wrong. That doesn't mean we support Hitler, or do we support the Holocaust. This is not up to us. God, he appoints the destiny of man. But nevertheless, this is a phenomena that has been advanced by mostly the Jews. Even in the United States, they take the realm of advancing homosexuality from the United States to the rest of the world. I mean, St. John, he invested much, and Isaiah invested much, talking about the harlot's sexual immorality. Isaiah chapter 3, He says, the looks on their faces, they parade their sin like Sodom does, and they do not even try to hide it. They what? Parade their sin like Sodom does, and they do not even try to hide it. It's in the open. Isaiah was speaking the headlines that we read in the newspapers, the gay parades.
Yeah.
And so how the question to the Christian Zionist is, here we have a dichotomy between the holy city in Apocalypse 11 in verse 2, the holy city is trampled. In verse 8, the great city is Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. Now here, in this prophecy, he says that Jerusalem gave Sodom comfort. So, and then he says, this Samaria and this Sodom is given to Jerusalem, so Jerusalem becomes their mother. So you have to have a restoration of a Sodom. There is not ancient Sodom. There is a Sodom elsewhere. Let's say the United States of Sodom. You have a restoration of a Samaria. Is not ancient Samaria. This is Christendom fell into syncretism, which we see the Pope with Pachamama and things of that sort. And so you have a syncretistic ideology with the LGBT as combined, as Christendom falls into the same sin of Samaria and the same sin of Sodom. And he says, I will give them, Sodom and Samaria, to you as daughters. Wow. Therefore, there you have it. The mother of harlots. Christendom becomes the harlots. She is a mother of several harlots. We talk about the mother. We always argue which one is the mother of harlots, but we ignore the harlots or the daughters. So the nation states that God views as Sodom or LGBT, support LGBT or give comfort to LGBT, those are viewed as the nations or daughters of Sodom. And he also calls them daughter Babylon. So here you have Jerusalem being a mother of harlots, very clear. And she drinks this cup. She partakes in this cup. In fact, the golden cup. Let me pull that verse up. Give me a second here.
In the apocalypse you're talking about?
Yes, she is given a golden cup.
Wait. For the people who kept hearing you say apocalypse, he's talking about Revelation. Most Protestants call it Revelation. But Orthodox Catholics call it the apocalypse. So I don't want them,
Yeah, Orthodox call it apocalypse. Revelation means apocalypse.
Yes, exactly. But a lot of people may not make that. And like, what is he talking about? Well, book. Apocalypse is simply transliteration of the Greek, guys. Revelation is English. So apocalypse means revelation. Revelation. We get it for you anyway.
Okay.
Oh, we got it for you. Just because people may wonder, what is he talking about, the apocalypse? I didn't have time to mention that earlier. If you wonder why I'm getting allergies. See, we're under severe demonic attack. Walid, your show brought a lot of demons to attack us. Revelation 17, mister.
Yes.
Or
Revelation
apocalypse.
Apocalypse. Yes. Okay. In Revelation 17, verse 4, this mother of harlots, she holds a cup in her hand, a golden cup full of abominations and the unclean things of her sexual immorality. It's very clear. Sexual immorality. It's not just spiritual immorality, but it's sexual immorality. So in the entire Old Testament, by the way, there's only one place where this golden cup exists. Where does it exist? In Jeremiah 51.
Yeah, exactly.
Verses 5 and 7. Look what it says. So if in doubt that this is speaking of the state of Israel, then you must tell us, what is Jeremiah 51, 5 to 7 talking about? Look what it says. For Israel is not forsaken, nor Judah by his God. God is not going to forsake all of Israel and all of Judah. Though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. Whose land is filled with sin? No Christian Zionist can escape that one. No matter what you argue, no matter how you want to slice and dice this prophecy, you must answer a question. Whose land here is filled with sin? There's only two choices, Judah and Israel. And what does he say? Flee from the midst of Babylon. He calls it Babylon. And everyone save his life. Do not be cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. That's the verse Jesus left out in his shortest sermon at the Nazareth synagogue to fulfill in the next second coming. Exactly. So who destroys Jerusalem? Christ allows the destruction of Jerusalem. He commands the destruction of Jerusalem. He shall recompense her. Babylon has been the golden cup in the hand of the Lord, intoxicating all the earth. The nations have drunk of her wine. Therefore, the nations are going insane. Who's going to be part of this conundrum? The Christian Zionist. Who's telling the Jews to leave the land? Sam Shamoun, the Palestinians, the priests over there, everybody else saying you need to leave this land. You cannot do what you're doing in this land. You're killing people. You need to get the hell out. Who's going to insist? Telling the Jews, hold your ground while they're raptured and don't give a damn about them.
Exactly.
Who's that? The Christian Zionist. Who has more blood on their hands?
Yep.
Do you imagine that God is not going to require this blood? Do you imagine that if you say, the hell with the Egyptians, the hell with the Syrians, the hell with the Libyans, the hell with the Iraqis, let them kill each other as long as the descendants of Israel are protected to establish a greater Israel?
Yeah.
Do you think God is not going to require that blood from your hands? And by the way, that blood is even more. It's not only the blood that is spilled in the Middle East, quenching the soil of the Middle East. It's blood that is also the Chinese. They claim that the 200 million man army is from China.
Yeah.
So 200 million man army is going to die invading Israel. So we better destroy them before they get there. And by the way, Isaiah 49, he redeems Sunnim, China. Scholars agree, Sunnim is China. God redeems China. Why? To destroy Babylon. There's so much in these mysteries. And so then what else is not enough? The Middle Eastern blood must be shed. 200 million Chinese must die. But there's more blood to spill. The blood of the Slavs. It must go. How come? It's the nations God is going to redeem in Isaiah 11. He calls them Israel. God lifts up the banner for the Gentiles, and they come from Egypt, from Pathros, from Syria, Hama. They come from all over the place, and God calls them Israel. How about Isaiah 17? Isaiah 17. They really, I used to do interviews a while ago, and I used to tell us about Isaiah 17. I go like, what do you keep talking about Isaiah 17 for? Isn't that the destruction of Damascus? Damascus will be destroyed. Let's pull out that prophecy and read it in its context.
It's right there on the screen.
Okay.
My eye. Alrighty.
Hold on a second. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, so it's on the screen too.
Oh, it's on the screen.
Yeah, I've been bringing it up.
Behold, Damascus will cease from being a city. Well, who's calling to destroy Damascus all the time? And it will be ruinous heap. The cities of our were forsaken, and so on and so forth. The fortress will also cease from Ephraim, the kingdom of from Damascus, and the remnants of Syria. Who? The remnants of Syria, the refugees of Syria. What happens to them? They will be as the glory of the children of Israel. God is going to redeem the refugees of Syria. Now you understand why there is such hatred against the refugees. In that day it shall come to pass, what? That the glory of Yaqub will wane. The glory of who?
Israel, yeah.
The Jews will wane. And the fatness of his flesh grow lean. Oh, he's just going to run the treadmill and he's going to lose some weight?
That's what I need to do. Shoot.
No, he's talking about a Holocaust, skin and bones. When did this happen? When did the refugees of Syria God redeems, and Aram God redeems, and Pathros and Egypt and all these countries God redeems? Is he just talking about the land of Israel? Is he just talking about Judea? He's talking about much bigger macrocosmic event. So there you go. His flesh will grow lean. It shall be as when the harvester gathers the grain and reaps the heads with his arm. It shall be as who gathers the head of grain in the valley of Rephaim. It goes on and so forth. And so, you know, it's impossible to comprehend the prophecies. When you read them, you find things of that sort, and you go, God is going to give the victory to Netanyahu. There's a definite two Israels, a rejected Israel, destroyed in Ezekiel 39 itself, destroyed in Daniel 12, destroyed in Isaiah, destroyed in Ezekiel 15, destroyed in Micah 5, you know. And even when you go to the favorite prophecies, you know, in Zechariah, speaking about a different Jerusalem, you know, speaking about that the Jewish remnants will recognize God who is only in Jerusalem. What happened to their God in Tel Aviv, Haifa? Speaking about now they will recognize the heavenly Jerusalem and the God of the heavenly Jerusalem. So when we talk about Galatians 4, a dichotomy that St. Paul sets up between earthly Jerusalem and heavenly Jerusalem, our mother, that dichotomy carries into the Old Testament prophecies. You really cannot be a student of biblical prophecies and ignore Galatians 4 and ignore Romans 9:6. Not all Israel are who descended from Israel, and to claim this Nazistic way of looking at the scriptures. You become exactly as the Nazis when you start looking at genetics. There's no difference between what you see Jews doing and the Nazis, because they are now a special people because of their genetics and not because of the spirit. When the matters of the spirit are removed from the equation, to look at the matters of the genetics is what causes the bloodshed, and that bloodshed will be demanded of everyone who follows these bastards who teach this stuff. It is evil teaching. It must be denounced. You know, this whole thing with Gaza began to wake me up. I began to take a look at what's happening. I go like, my people. I look at them. I go like, my gosh, children shot in the head. You know, Jewish soldier carrying rainbow flags in front of Gaza as they bomb Gaza. Is the Palestinians supporting the rainbow flag?
No.
Who brought the flags with the fags in? The Palestinians? The Palestinians did not bring the fags in.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
You know, I remember, teenager, there was a Jewish, homosexual He used to come with his motorcycle, hang in the middle of the town there, and people started asking, "What is this guy doing?" He was soliciting young men. The whole town chased him out. What the hell are you doing? You go to the Palestinian area and you say, you know, there was a good. It was a Jew who was interviewing Palestinians versus Israelis. You can,
Which one?
you know, the Jew, he interviews Palestinians versus Israelis. Do you support homosexual agenda? And,
Oh yeah.
oh hell no, you know. And they go to Israel. They all support the homosexual agenda. In fact, there was one study shows they estimate that 30% of Israeli Jews are bisexual.
Oh,
Yeah, because they say these statistics look for homosexual, but bisexual is undermined. In other words, they're so depraved they go either way.
But you know, I think that the surge, or the, how do I say it, just the over representation and the immensity of Sodom and Israel is due to a curse that began not too long after the crucifixion. And I've talked about this on your show before, but I'll bring it up again because it does pertain to the subject. 40 years after the crucifixion and the resurrection, there was something called the Roman-Judean War that broke out. The Judeans said, we're going to revolt, we're going to overthrow the Romans, we're going to establish a Jewish state. I guess you could say this is the beginning of Zionism in a way. And but the thing about the Roman-Judean War is that it wasn't just Romans versus Jews. It was, to a great extent, Jews killing one another. And if anyone wants to challenge me on this, I'll just tell them to actually take the time to read Josephus's history on the Roman-Judean War, which is our main authority, arguably our only authority, or our only firsthand account on the Roman-Judean War. I mean, you can go to the Talmud, but the Talmud is extremely biased and has a whole bunch of folk tales in it. But if you read Josephus's history on the Roman-Judean War, a huge portion of that history is covering the Jewish civil war that was going on at the same time. And so you had different factions of the Jews that were killing one another. You had the Zealots on one side, and then on the other side, you had the Sadducees/Pharisees. And the Zealots ultimately took over the city of Jerusalem. They butchered the Sadducees. They butchered anyone who disagreed with them. They butchered the Pharisees. And Josephus tells us that when they took over the city of Jerusalem, all of a sudden, the Zealot faction, now this is the faction that called itself Zealots, meaning, according to Josephus, these were the people who were the biggest hardliners when it came to imposing the Torah. So these were hardcore. You could say they were like Wahhabis, but for post-Christ, post-crucifixion Judaism. And Josephus tells us that all of a sudden the Zealots became homosexual. Very few. I could only find 2 historians who bring this up, by the way, who reference this account from Josephus. But Josephus tells us that men began to go with men, and they began to put eyeliner on, and they began to put dresses on. And Josephus tells us that while they were dressed up in women's attire, they were butchering people. So thus begins this trend of homosexuality amongst the Jews after the crucifixion. So there was a curse that happened.
God gave them up.
And remember what St. Paul says in Romans, in the first chapter of Romans. He says that men began to go with men and God gave them up. So when the crucifixion happened, I think God gave them a grace period of 40 years. And then after that 40-year period, you had this revolution. Sam he's there. You had this revolution. And I think the curse really got unleashed. And remember what Jesus says he says that this generation is like a man who is possessed by one demon. That one demon leaves him and brings back 7 more. In other words, Judea is going to become even more demonic. Now, there's another fact in the gospel that I've heard almost no one bring up, and I find this to be very fascinating. But when Jesus is carrying the cross to Mount Golgotha, he sees some ladies weeping for him. And he says, weep not for me, but weep for your children. But he also says, for if they can do this to a green tree, imagine what they will do to dead wood. Something like this. Well, what does that mean? Well, I have a theory. I could be wrong, but I have a theory. If they can do this to a green tree, meaning if they can do this to the Messiah, imagine what they will do to each other. Yeah. This is my theory about it. Because after 40 years after the crucifixion, they were butchering one another and turning to homosexuality. But you see, it's so funny because if you talk to Jewish people today, they will always say, well, the reason why we rejected Jesus is because he doesn't fit the criteria, or he did not fit the criteria for Messiah. But yet, the Jews, who the Jews today claim are to be our authority, accepted so many false messiahs. Bar Kokhba. So if in other words, if the judgment of the Jews at that time was so great, if it was so orthodox, then why did they accept Bar Kokhba? Apparently, their judgment and their discernment really wasn't that good.
And by the way, that's the oldest. You know, how did they elect Bar Kokhba? Are you familiar with the story, Sam?
I know that Rabbi Akiva had something to do with it, but not all the details.
Yes, Rabbi Akiva ibn Yusuf. Kuzba means the lie. And, a star comes out of Jacob. The word star is
319,
Kokaba, which is, I think it's in the Aramaic language as well, isn't it? Yeah, Kokaba means...
Say Kichwa.
Yeah, okay.
We say Kichwa.
Yeah, so we say Kokaba. Okay, so they did an etymological twist. So they made Kuzba to become Kokaba. It matched in Numbers 24. Yeah, 24. Because the star comes out of Jacob. And what does he do? What is the star comes out of Jacob? The real star, not the false one. He destroys the remnants of the city. The remnants of the city. So what happens to the rest? They flee. So only who remain in the city will die. The rest will be destroyed. It says in Numbers 24, if you can pull it up, 24, 18 to 24. Number 24, 18 to 24.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, 18. Let's go to 18:18. And Edom shall be a possession. So they read this and they go, oh, see, Edom is going to be our slaves. The Arabs will be enslaved by the Jews. No, Edom shall be a possession for Christ. They convert. Seir also, his enemies, shall be a possession. They convert. While Israel does valiantly. Oh, wow, Israel does valiantly. Who is Israel? They're going to say it's the Jews. Is it really the Jews? Go to verse 24. But ships shall come from the coast of Cyprus, and they shall afflict Ashur, which is Assyria, in this case Gog, and afflict Eber, the Hebrews, and so shall Amalek until he perishes. Which translation is this one?
Oh, this is well, it puts Amalek in italics. That means it's not part of the text.
Oh, please, can you get me something part of the text? Don't give me this.
Yeah, this was italics. So italicized, they're trying to let you know they supplied it.
Let's go the NASB, let's see.
Okay, let's see
New King James or whatever.
This was New King James. You didn't like it.
That was? Okay, let's try a different one.
Okay, let's go right here. Yeah, italics, when a word's italics, that means they supplied it because they think it should be there.
Oh,
That's an interpretation.
So they also will come to desolation.
yeah. I
That's
don't
it.
like this italic things.
That's an interpretation, though.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know.
Translation.
I
Exactly.
know.
Yeah, that's their interpretation.
Yeah, I go to the Hebrew. Okay.
Yes.
But ships shall come from the coast of Chittim, and they shall afflict Ashur, and will afflict Eber, the Hebrews. So they also, the Hebrews, will come to destruction. So if Israel in verse 18, which is victorious, is the Hebrews, why are the Hebrews destroyed? And by the way, Eber is the father of both the Arabs and the Jews. And what do we find in Isaiah 21? Both Arabia and both Israel are destroyed together. It's quite amazing. You know, it goes back to Galatians 4. This is Mount Hagar, Mount Sinai in Arabia. He's referring to Arabia. Really, St. Paul is referring to Isaiah and to these prophecies. They had a better understanding that we have what this text meant in the Old Testament. And so here we have Eber completely destroyed. They tried to finagle with this, but it's impossible. And he also, Adi Abad, destroyed, completely annihilated. So they will no longer, just like the 10 tribes of Israel, there's no more 10 tribes of Israel. The same thing will be with the Eber, the Hebrews. They will no longer be a Judah and this kind of concept.
By the way, what
New Jerusalem. There's no more the 12 tribes or literal tribes or any of that in the New Jerusalem. These are allegoric expressions. It takes books just to discuss what 12 tribes means and how, you know, we only have a couple hours with you. I have it in 700 pages explaining the details of all the text and make it an impossibility for any scholar.
1 second, brother. 1 second. Ashmaiz, I want to ask him to practice what he preaches. I love this young man. He is ethnically Jewish. He's entering into the Christian faith. He's actually looking into the Catholic Church. This is an indirect, nice way of taking a shot, in a nice way. He says, right here, I just want to show he's going to have to take down his video if he's going to practice what he preaches. Middle roads and balance are great places to be, Sam. Meaning, we shouldn't be extreme. But this is the man who joined apostate prophet David Wood, two extreme Zionists that have done nothing but attack and slander Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. So now I'm going to hold my brother to the same standard. I want him to delete the video he did with them because he went with two extreme nuts who one of them now is whoring himself in Israel, right? Apostate prophet, right? He went on their show to give a voice to the lies of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, so-called. So now, Ash, I better see that video removed because I want you to be balanced, because you went and gave weapon to the extreme opposite of a guy who's now in Israel parading, left his wife, we still don't know why, and he's playing the victim and gaslighting. So I just wanted to correct that, brother.
Yeah, it's impossible for these to really debate the issues with us. Simple questions, you know, will decimate their argument. It's impossible to really, you know, to really understand the whole thing about the land of the north, how the Jewish remnants flee to the land of the north, how they come out of the land of the north in repentance, and all these things, how the sequence of events is given to us. And there's the whole concept of Gog and Magog and the Roman Empire, the West, what happens to Europe, how is that Babylon also involved? You know, the three prongs of mystical Babylon. What is St. John talking about when he says about earthquakes? Because, you know, people think of an earthquake, they think of a magnitude 8.0 earthquake. Earthquakes, allegorically, are either schisms, an earthquake, or God brings back shatters something that came together. The idea of mystical Babylon. The idea of mystical Babylon is, you know, the Antichrist has a powwow where he brings all faiths together. And so all three faiths will come together. And God says, no, he will send each one to his own disposition. So an earthquake, a mighty earthquake strikes Babylon, it becomes three parts. That's exact words that St. John uses. It breaks down into three parts, back to their disposition. And so we find all these three parts in the prophets. We find Arabia, we find Europe as Babylon, and we find Israel as Babylon. And there's only really three. Peter writes from Rome, he says Babylon. So Rome turns into Babylon. And I know you're Catholic, but I don't think you would accept the notion what happens at the Vatican. Not all Catholics agree with what happened in the Vatican.
No, exactly, brother. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that Christ Church is not one. It is one. We are all one, and it is the apostolic succession. Yes, there is a schism. God is going to deal with that schism. And so the unification of the church doesn't happen by man's efforts. Christ is the one who finally will remove the schism and expose what is happening at a higher level. We are simply people, laity. We do what we can do. You take a look at Bartholomew of Constantinople. It's very interesting. Bartholomew of Constantinople, he's causing a lot of mischief. He supported the church in Ukraine against Russia. In other words, he made up a church in Ukraine and supported that church in Russia, and it's Nazi. And so it's not the infraction is not just on the Catholic Church, but also the Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox. So God takes a stone and he separates it from the mountain. What is that mountain? This is the Roman Empire. But that Roman Empire has two divides. He separates it from the mountain. He cuts it from the mountain. And that stone strikes the image at the feet. There's 2 feet, Eastern Roman, Western Roman. That stone becomes a great mountain and fills the earth. How does a stone become a mountain and fill the earth unless a mountain is a kingdom? By the way, it says, Daniel says, in the days of those kings, God will establish a kingdom. In the days of those kings cannot be the universal church. In the days of those kings, the 10 acolytes of the Antichrist is but less than 100 years. The church wasn't established in less than 100 years. It still continues. So this kingdom is a literal kingdom. And the 10 kingdoms is reminiscent to Joseph's half-brothers. He had 10 mischievous half-brothers. So it is metaphorical. Joseph had a dream, 11 brothers bowing to him, but only 10 bowed to him. That prophecy was never fulfilled because it's speaking of a mystical Joseph who God separates from his brethren, splits. That's what happened to Joseph. He was split from his brethren, went to Egypt, and then they all needed Joseph, and they all, and so we understand there's a mystical Joseph. So the unification of remnant Judah with the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. This is an allegorical expression. It's a son of Joseph, allegorically. This is that nation in the north that God brings with a remnant Judah and with a remnant of Israel all over the world will come together, and that's the reunification, and they become one stick. What Christian Zionist had resolved the mystery of Joseph? What Christian Zionist understood in Genesis, where it has prophecies about a mystical Joseph, his horns, and his arrows and all these things? I mean, there are things in the scripture that no Christian Zionist quotes. They simply quote portions of Isaiah, portions of Ezekiel, the valley of the dead bones. This is talking about the resurrection. And they claim that this is the resurrection of a state in sin. Where in the New Testament does God command to establish a state in sin? Nowhere. So if really this idea of the state of Israel was so important, why did the New Testament forget about it? In fact, when I used to be Zionist, I remember I didn't like the New Testament because it doesn't talk about these prophecies and all these things, until I realized, that I misunderstood these prophecies because of the West. The West brainwashed us into understanding the wrong formula.
Walid, if I can ask some questions in light of what you just said, because you're going to confirm. You just said something. I want everyone to hear this because he confirmed what I've been saying. He didn't like the New Testament too much because he was too fascinated, because we were duped, him, me, Simon Altaf. You remember Simon? He's going to come up in a minute. Into Israel still being the chosen people and they have to return to the land. In fact, if you guys go on YouTube, put on Walid Shobat, Israel and Prophecy. There are dozens of his videos still on here. Let me just show you. So why I want to ask him these questions, because this man, Palestinian Muslim terrorist, ends up becoming Christian Zionist, fighting for, against, I should say, against, in quotation marks, the Palestinian Hamas, and gung-ho for Israel. Now look at him now. He's matured into the faith where he tells you Zionism is not New Testament teaching, which is why they run to the Old Testament. So can you tell them the journey you and I had and Simon Altaf? You remember Simon?
Oh, yeah. He turned into... Well, yeah, I remember Sam Shamoun. I mean, what are we talking about? 1990 something.
Yeah, 98, 99, or a little, maybe a couple of years earlier, but around that time.
Yeah, with Jochen Katz from Germany.
Yep.
Remember?
Started Answering Islam.
That was the first website in the world. When the first web came up, and we began to start a website called answeringislam.org, I believe.
Yep, it's still there. Still here.
Yeah, yes. And you became very prolific in your writing about Islam, and but at those days, I remember you were a Calvinist. In fact, we got together in California, if you remember.
Yes, unfortunately, I was a Calvinist. Yes,
you were Calvinist, and you had the tulip, and you were talking about the tulip. You were trying to proselytize me to the tulip, and I was trying to proselytize you to Christian Zionism. Both confused, teaching confused, but we understood that Islam is not it. That's one thing about it. Yeah. And so, it developed, and then I began to write books, and then I became, a prominent Zionist. I was all over the world, and I was funded by Zionists. I mean, and then I hired Zionists. I hired one from Israel and one from Pennsylvania, Jews. And the moment my son began to criticize certain crimes committed by Jews, he began to write about a rabbi.
That's a whole.
Who was abusing poor Africans.
No, it was
chicken.
No, you're talking about
chicken pack.
Shalom Rubatskin.
Okay, yeah, Shalom Rubatskin. Anyway, and so then we started getting. Yeah,
I didn't want to cut you off. This is your article defending the biblical basis for the restoration of Israel on Answering Islam.
Can you delete it?
But that's not up to me. I don't own the website, man. I don't own the website. I can't delete it.
Well, it's.
I don't know.
Then I get these messages from my web guy and from my manager who's making the appointments for my speaking engagements. Stop talking about this. Stop talking about that. He's a Jew. Stop talking about him. They started dictating to us what to say and what not to say. Exactly the story of Charlie Kirk. The same thing. We used to get so many hits. And the funders started calling us and saying, we don't want you to talk about homosexuality. Just talk about Israel. And I go like, who am I being funded by? Where is this coming from? What is going on here? You begin to wake up. You go like, I am losing my freedom. I had more freedom as a Palestinian. I have no freedom to express truly calling evil evil regardless to the race. And so the pressure began to build. And then they brought the website down. From Israel, they brought the website down, and they wanted to steal the charitable foundation and all these things. And it was a hell. It was a major war. We had to fight, And then we got rid of these people, and we started realizing you cannot be unequally yoked. You cannot be unequally yoked means what it means. You cannot be unequally yoked. To say that John Hagee can make friends with rabbis and say, yeah, we have something in common. We don't have anything in common. They deny the Father and the Son. Exactly. Just as the Muslims deny the Father and the Son, that makes them Antichrist. That's why God treats them with Arabia the same way. He sees them as denying of the Father and the Son. Okay, Antichrist. Wahhabist Arabia, deny the Father and the Son. Okay, Antichrist. And so he destroys all the kingdoms of Antichrist. Yes, Ted.
Did you see the debate between Michael Brown and an Eastern Orthodox Christian that happened recently?
No, did it happen? Where?
It was Michael Brown versus Finocchio. It's a really good debate, and the best part of the debate. I debated Michael Brown back in 2016, but the best part of that debate, because my dad brought up Antichrist and denying the Father and the Son.
Yes.
The Finocchio, who's Eastern Orthodox, he said that Judaism is Antichrist. And Michael Brown said, for you to call it Antichrist tells me that you know nothing about Judaism. Now, Michael Brown is very educated. He knows more about the Bible than the average person does.
Yeah.
So for him to say that tells me that he's dishonest. And Finocchio said, does not St. John write that he is Antichrist who denies that Jesus is the Christ?
James Brown says first, you know nothing about Judaism.
I said that.
Yeah,
I said that. Yeah, he said Judaism. And Michael Brown said, I go with Paul. Paul says that the Jews have zeal. And Finocchio did not let him get away with it. I give him credit. He says, no. Answer the question, Michael. Does not St. John say this? And what do the Jews believe about Jesus? Do they not reject Jesus as the Christ? Yep. And Michael Brown says, well, yeah, they don't believe Jesus is the Christ. He goes, okay, so they're Antichrist. And Michael Brown did not want to concede this. Right. So it tells you that really this Christian Zionism stuff is used as a way to really get people to Judaize.
Yep. 100%.
That's really what it is.
And it's going to lead me to Simon Altaf. Now, why am I showing people Walid's former posts? So he's not lying. I have no control over the articles. I don't own the website, so I can't delete them. Here is Walid refuting an Arab Christian, trying to prove that Israel is a fulfillment of prophecy. This is you back then. And because you have a hot blood like me, you even put in quotation marks Arab Christian by way of mockery. Because he's an Arab Christian, and he said, when he read your book, dear Muslim, let me tell you why I believe. Your section on Israel being fulfillment prophecy so upset him that he almost thought about not becoming a Christian.
Yeah.
And you were, at that time, gung-ho for Zionism, and I was on your side, and I love the fact you tore him to shred. Now we find out the man was right, we were wrong.
Can you write him?
Yeah.
Here, let me send it to you in the private chat if you never saw it. These are your father's. I don't know how old you'd be back then. It's like 99, 2000.
I was 9 or 10.
Yep, this is your dad's work back then. He was gung-ho Zionist. So, guys, here is an article from him showing you the 180 he's done. Why did he buy into Zionism? Because when he left Islam, the only option he had in his area, evangelical, Protestant, Christian, Zionist churches.
Yep.
He bought into it. I bought into it because I was converted by independent fundamental Baptist. I had a friend when I was around 6.5. He was 9 years old. Mother was a Catholic. Grandmother was a Catholic, but his uncles became Baptists, and we went to Baptist churches. So notice what he said, and I don't want to belabor him because I want them to. And I want to bring them back for a part 2. but he said he really disliked the New Testament because he couldn't show this from the New Testament. In Theodore, in one of your comments, there was a guy saying who started out as a Christian, but as he started reading the Tanakh, following what the rabbi said, he left Christianity. Simon Altaf was someone we knew.
Yes.
He was a Muslim, became Christian, got so fascinated with Judaism or the Jewish roots of Christianity, he's now pretty much a rabbi who thinks Jesus is a false Messiah. This is the road
exactly
Zionism leads you. So do you want to say something about that?
Yes, in fact, we had the same experience. What's his name?
The Navy SEAL guy.
The Navy SEAL guy. Talk about him.
Yeah. Tell us about him.
I knew this. Well, we knew this guy years ago. This was back in like 2012, 2013. He was a former Navy SEAL, and he left the SEALs, and he got super deep into the Bible.
What was his name?
I don't want to give name, but his first name was David.
Give his name. So what?
Dave Lopez. That was his name.
Lopez, Hispanic, huh? And he becomes. Go ahead.
Yeah. And he
was a Navy SEAL. In fact, we inquired about his Navy SEALness. And
he was a confirmed Navy SEAL. He wasn't a fake.
We called what's his name?
Don Shipley to confirm his background. He was a real Navy SEAL. It wasn't stolen valor or anything like that. And he ended up getting super deep into the Bible, and he got so deep into it. One morning, he gives me a call, and he says, "I have concluded that St. Paul was a false prophet."
Yep.
Because he got so deep into the Sabbath, and we have to honor the Sabbath and honor kosher, and he was keeping kosher and all this stuff. And then he calls me at around 10 a.m. one morning, and he says, "I have concluded that St. Paul was a false prophet." Now, at this time, I was Catholic. I was a new Catholic. So I had already read a lot of the church fathers. And I said to him, "Okay, so what makes you think Paul is a false prophet?" And he says, because Paul was basically telling people that they don't need to follow kosher and that they don't really have to do the Sabbath. In other words, Paul, when it comes to the Judaizers, Messianics, whatever you want to call them, a dual covenant, heretics, whatever you want to call them, Christian Zionists, Paul is their big enemy.
Exactly.
Because Paul comes along and he says, "Hey, Levi, forget Levi." In fact, I have a lot to say about this. Maybe
Paul messes up the party.
Yeah, maybe we can do a part 2 because I have a lot to say about this.
No, we're going to come back for a part 2. Let's do it when I come back from Florida after the 17th, God willing. But go ahead, make your point here.
Well, Paul basically comes along and he says, "Levi and the whole Levitical priesthood, forget it. It's done. We are now in the priesthood of Melchizedek." And Melchizedek wasn't even Jewish, wasn't even a Hebrew. As Paul says, Levi was in the bowels of Abraham when Melchizedek was alive. This is what Paul says.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be a Judaizer and if you want to get people to start doing the Sabbath and doing kosher law, well, you got to get rid of this Paul guy.
You got to get rid of Melchizedek.
Sure.
Yeah, because Paul comes along and says, forget the Levitical priesthood.
Right.
And the Judaizers say we have to bring back the Levitical priesthood. So they have to get rid of Paul. So this guy was basically telling me all this stuff, not everything that I just said, but he was saying that Paul is against Judaizing. So he's a false prophet. And I said to him, "So do you read the book of Acts?" He says, "Yeah, I read the book of Acts." I said, "Well, do you know who wrote the book of Acts?" He goes, "Who?" I said, "Well, it was St. Mark, I believe, who wrote the book of Acts." And in the book of Acts, it affirms St. Paul. And the book of Acts tells us that Paul met Jesus. So if you have no issue with Mark and you have no issue with the book of Acts, then you have to accept Paul, or else are you now going to tell me that Mark was a liar? And he says, "I believe that Mark was fooled."
Oh, so that's
what he tells me. And I said, so Mark was fooled. So God really messed up right in the beginning is what you're telling me. So yeah. Mark is not inspired. Book of Acts is not inspired. You're really messing up here. And he says, he says, well, I think Mark messed up. I think Paul was such a good deceiver. And I said to him, so where is your religion in history? I said, where is your church, your group in history? Can I find it in the first century? Where is it in the first century? Where is it in the second century? I said, I can find Catholicism easily in the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century. Where is it? Where is your religion? Where is your successors? Where is your apostolic succession? I said, was the world in such darkness until you, David Lopez, popped up?
Yeah.
Did you figure everything out and everyone else before you couldn't figure anything out?
They have to get rid of the Palestinian.
And did he end up just exiting Christianity altogether then, right?
He ended up becoming a Jew.
Have you ever followed up to see what was this like a while back or?
Oh, well, this was back in 2013, around there. The last time he called me up and he told me that he believed in polygamy.
See? Yeah.
So
same thing with Simon Altaf.
Yeah,
He started believing in polygamy.
Yeah. Say it again. Even Simon Altaf believes in multiple marriages. Yep, because there's nothing in the Old Testament to forbid it. Yep.
He got into this African Israelism and all these things, and it's just a windy road after this. They have to get rid of the Palestinian Melchizedek.
Yeah.
They got to, for the stuff to work out, we got to get rid of this Palestinian, this Melchizedek is Canaani. They got to get rid of that guy.
Yeah. It's a dangerous path. And I said, if apostate prophet keeps going this direction, he's going to leave Christianity. He's not going to be a Christian any longer.
That is the problem with Christian Zionism, really. You keep going down the rabbit hole, and then it focuses on a literal physical temple. There's nowhere Ezekiel's temple. Ezekiel's temple is a question mark. If there's a big if statement in that temple, if you do this, then I will give you this grand temple. But you never did. Therefore, so they get into this whole idea and the measure of the temple. There is not a single verse anywhere in either New or Old Testament that supports the rebuilding of a temple.
Yeah. It's ironic. I take the same interpretation of Ezekiel 40:48 you do, and we did it independently of each other. So notice our journeys, me and him. Started out Baptist, Christian Zionist, sadly became Calvinist, but I was Reformed Baptist. He was evangelical, gung-ho, pro-Israel. And he still has the articles. Now look where we're at. So God is sanctifying us, changing us, and definitely it's not biblical. Now, are you shocked to know that your dad wrote in defense of Israel?
No, not because I was raised with this stuff. And but I began to question all this stuff in 2013. That's when I started questioning everything. Because now I was maybe questioning a little bit before here and there before that, but 2013 was really the year that I seriously began to question it, because I started reading St. Ambrose.
Beautiful. St.
Ambrose of Milan, the guy who baptized St. Augustine, who taught St. Augustine, who helped bring St. Augustine into the faith. And in Ambrose of Milan talks about the synagogues. He says the synagogues are unholy, they're antichrist, they're evil, etc. And I was reading John Chrysostom, and Chrysostom was getting into how the synagogues are evil and how the Judaizers need to be avoided, or they need to be completely avoided, and they're heretics and all this stuff. And in that same year, when I began to read St. Ambrose, we were getting funded by this billionaire Jewish couple.
Yeah.
And one day, and I was talking about the gay agenda. And one day we get contacted by this Jewish billionaire couple, and they said, well, if you want to continue to get our money, you got to stop talking about the gays, or else we're not going to give you money. And that began to, I'm not joking. I got this nasty email from this guy who was a Jewish guy who was in our circle, and he's telling me to stop your homophobic rants, just talk about Israel. And I gave this guy a call and I said, hey, what's your problem? And he said, we're going to lose the money. We're going to lose the money. And I said, are you sure it's just money that controls you? It sounds like something else is controlling you. And I implied by that, I was implying the devil. And after that conversation, I basically told this guy to go take a hike, and I hung up the phone on him. And after that conversation, I told my dad, I said, Ambrose, he was right.
See?
We have to listen. And this was really part of the whole journey.
Yeah. And they shut down your website too, because they had control over it, you said, right?
For a month and a half.
I want people to hear this. Because they're going to think, oh, yeah, no. So you were being backed up by very wealthy Jews because of your love for Israel. But when they started seeing, first, you questioning the homosexual movement, not even questioning Israel yet, you were questioning homosexuality. And the Jewish supporters milieu said, you better stop, or we're going to cut funding.
We weren't even criticizing Israel.
Yeah,
because Sodom is Israel. You see, there's no difference.
Yeah, I mean, I started looking back in the emails how we first started being funded. I mean, some of the names of high people in the stock market. I mean, major figures who started our
Posen, Mr. Posen.
Mr. Posen, yeah.
He was with Mitt Romney.
And the Cherniks, and these were major people, because and then I got this phone call, please stop talking about this, focus on Israel. And then my wife Maria finally put her foot down. She said, it's either my son or the money, take a pick. I said, my son comes before the money. You're right, my son comes before the money, because he was writing articles and it was upsetting them. And he's reading all these church fathers and things like that, and he's upsetting them. I said, no, my son. So I called, I said, I don't want your money anymore. Done. Money is not everything. So
yeah. And but because you trusted them with the website to manage it, then they blocked you from having access to it. How'd you get it back? Tell them that detail.
They completely they made the website non-existent.
Just like
they
mine,
didn't just block it. Yeah, it was gone. The website was gone, and it was a legal battle to get it back.
Yeah,
you had to go to court to get your website.
You got to get a lawyer.
To get a lawyer, and we had
a lawyer. I never went to court, but it was just a lawyer type of situation.
Wow.
Yeah, they were trying to go to the board of directors to get us fired from the board, and it ended up. It was, by the way, it was a mostly Jewish board of directors. And several in the Jewish board of directors says he's calling the synagogue of Satan.
Oh yeah.
And one Jew says, I've heard the synagogue of Satan all my life. All Christians call us the synagogue of Satan. And somehow the Almighty helped us and had these, four Jews stand on our side on the board, and they tossed their asses out, and we were able to regain the whole thing, the domain and the whole thing.
I will say though, during the board meeting, one of them started screaming at me saying, Theodore is an anti-Semite. He's an anti-Semite. And then there was another Jewish guy who was on our side, and he said, he's not an anti-Semite. I've read the verse. It says synagogue of Satan. He says, it's part of the canon. It's part, it's part of the canon. That's what he believes in. And then, and then,
at least he wasn't kind enough to say, well, it's in his New Testament.
Yeah, and then the Jew who was accusing me of being anti-Semite, he yells at the other Jew who's on our side. He says, how much money did they give you? How much money did they give you? And then the guy who was on our side said, they didn't give me a damn cent. Well, it turns out that the guy who was accusing me of being an anti-Semite, he was getting bribed. Yeah, there was a whole situation with that. It was a lot of weird stuff.
So you guys have experienced this, so people don't know it's not just theory where you just read. You experience the backlash. If you're supported by millionaires who are Jewish, the backlash and the possibility of censorship.
When we saw Charlie Kirk, what happened to him, we knew exactly what he was going through. Exactly. He was getting his wake-up call. He was drinking the red pill. The main thing, even
it's a slow process.
In those prophecies that the Zionists love to quote, it talks about the watchman.
Yeah.
If a watchman is supposed to be watching and doesn't tell the people the enemy is coming, the blood is on his hands. Yep. If the watchman sounds the alarm and the blood is shed, it's not in the watchman's hands. The Christian Zionist is not a watchman because the blood is shed on their watch. Yeah. It's not going to be shed anymore on Sam Sam'oun's watch and Walid Shu'aibat's watch, because we now tell them, hey, we are the friend of the Jews. We are not an enemy of the Jews. We are the friend of the Jews. You are the enemy of the Jews. We are not an enemy of the Palestinians. We are the friend of Palestinians, Jews, whatever it is, Iraqis, Egyptian. God sees all people as one people. Yes, Ted, you're going to say something.
As As you think about what you're going to say, here's what I want to leave you with, because we'll come back for part 2, God willing. We had about 800 people for this. This is a good number for us. I'm not one of those that get thousands. For 800 to want to watch this, there's a hunger. And as people watch this, when you come back again, you're going to get a larger crowd, because people are getting sick of Christian Zionism. But one thing I'm going to tell you, because I've seen their pattern. Now, you may get apostate prophet who already doesn't like me because I called him out for certain things. And he may do a video and trying to challenge your narrative. So would you guys debate? And I'll join you if you want to do a 3-on-3. Any of these guys?
Bring it up. Bring it on.
I was thinking my dad, myself, you, Sam Shamoon, versus apostate prophet David Wood and Michael Brown. I think that would be epic.
One more time. Repeat that.
I think that a good idea would be myself, my dad, you, Sam Shamoon, versus apostate prophet David Wood and Michael Brown.
Signing me up.
That would be epic.
Sign me up.
I've debated Michael Brown. I debated him. You can see my debate. It's up on YouTube.
So you heard the challenge. Don't go in your echo chambers, people. Bring us on. There's actually a lot of YouTube channels that do moderated debates, standing for truth. Don't do your echo chamber where you talk about us. Bring your Michael Brown, who I know personally, and David Wood, since you got interested in Zionism with your buddy Apostate Prophet, 3-on-3, sign us up. We're ready. So let people know we're there.
Because always the argument the argument is talking about Israel from the New Testament perspective. Once you bring the Old Testament perspective and how it matches perfectly the New Testament in the prophets, in these prophecies they use, this is why I say the real argument about Christian Zionism, I haven't seen a full measure of really refuting this from its roots, because we argue over New Testament. Let's get into the Old Testament, and that's where you will find that the Old Testament refutes Christian Zionism.
Then I can go on record. I'm not trying to boast, guys. I don't think I'm holy or better than anyone. I will eviscerate anyone on the New Testament. If they dare use the New Testament to try to show there's still prophecies about Israel being returned to the Jews, I'm letting you know, I don't care who it is, Brown, whoever it is, I will eviscerate them all. So bring it on, 3-on-3. So, brethren, final words, because this has been epic, even though Satan attacked at the beginning. Very viciously attacked. Allergies, my eye was itching and my throat was bad, and attacks. And then the night before I go live with you guys, they delete my blog.
I know.
I don't know what to tell you, man. Walid, what you got? You got people now don't like me because they don't like you, Walid.
We're used to the scars. We have plenty,
Too many, man. Too many. Here
Yeah.
it is. Blog's gone. Look. Bye-bye, blog. Now I have to go by hand, copy and paste 2,000 blog posts from archive to put them on a new blog. 2,000. I had 2,000, brother. 3 years building it up, 2,000, they're gone. I mean, they're on archive, but can you imagine how many hours I have to now waste because of it? But I'll give you the last words, and we'll be back. Let's plan. God willing, I'll be back on the 17th of November. Let's do some that week, so it's still a hot topic.
Yes, the people want to, let's say they want to get, I'm working on finishing the book. If they're interested, write us. We'll keep a log of all the different email addresses at Shubat, Theodore T-Shubat
at gmail.com.
Can they get it on your YouTube channel?
They can write. Can they write you in the Facebook?
No, they can write me on Facebook, Theodore Ted Shubat Facebook page.
All right.
Or they can write me here.
If you put in the private chat, I can then put it on because
All right.
private chat.
All right.
That's his YouTube channel.
Or give him the other one.
The other one.
Shubat at Gmail.
Shubat at gmail.com, is it?
Shubat at Shubat.com.
Shubat at Shubat.com.
Yeah.
Or if you put it in the private, I'll share it with everybody. Let me see.
Gmail?
So he's still not finished the book yet, right?
Yeah, it's been finished a long time ago, but I want to make it. I want to make it solid. You see, because English is my second language, as you know. And so my biggest problem is the English language. And so I try to articulate the sentences, and I think in the Arabic fashion, from right to left, not left to right. So my writing comes up from right to left. So it's been my biggest dilemma is the English. Yeah, you have the
I gave it to him.
Yep, I just shared it right here, guys. Here's the email. They'll send you the book. They don't even charge you, right? Pray for their help.
Those days are gone.
And then also, you want to start sending it now because they're going to ask for it. And then they're going.
No, it's going to be a while. Maybe a couple months to finish it. Yes,
that's why I said it's not.
Be a while, guys.
It's not ready to be sent out. That's what I was trying to say. Though the book's finished, he wants to fine tune it.
I want to fine tune it.
So here's the email. Wait, be patient. Don't be sending them 10,000 emails a day.
Oh man, I put a comma.
Okay, hold on. He gave you the wrong one. Hold on.
I said comma instead of .com. I said comma.
So Showbot. Oh, so you put a comma. Okay.
.com.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me do it. Let me correct it for him. Hold on, guys. 1 second. That's a comma. He made a mistake. It's supposed to be a dot. Let me change it here. So wait, give them a few months, right? Don't be bothering them with 10,000 emails, and pray for my health to now spend 8 hours a day trying to get all my blogs on this new blog. It's going to be work, but God is good, and pray for their health, their holiness, protection. Pray for my health, holiness, and protection. And God have mercy on us, we pathetic sinners, and we're going to get a lot of backlash. I really think, I'm not exaggerating, this has never happened to me. I've been there for 3 years. And now the Zionist issue that came up, and we're going after it. And the night before, in fact, it was after midnight, I got a message, it's gone. It's gone. And they don't tell me why. I have my suspicions.
Believe me, we had all kinds of crazy things happen to us too. But
listen, anytime you bring up Israel or the synagogue, you are in the danger zone of getting suspended, struck, terminated, the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could sit here and talk about the Vatican till midnight.
But wait, you mean we're not going to get $7,000, Walid?
Yeah.
Not $7,000 for a post?
$7,000. That's a lot of money.
Anyway, the battle is real. We see what it is. And you've been confirming what I've been saying too. I mean, it's good to hear another voice come to the same conclusion. Just last week, I said, if you read the Bible carefully, Jerusalem is Egypt, Sodom, and Babylon. And you're confirming it's Babylon. So we got to do a part 2 after the 17th, God willing. So,
yeah, we got to do the Egypt, the Babylon, the whole thing.
Okay, so be prepared after the 17th, Lord willing. We'll do something right after that, the week right after that.
Do you want to schedule the date now, or do you want to wait?
Up to you. But remember, after the 17th. So if you have any day now in mind you want to do, we'll schedule it. If you want to come back,
after the 17th of November.
After the 17th of November. Okay, you give us the date. What date?
That's up to you guys. If you want to come back, let me know.
Yeah, what you operate mostly on Thursday?
No. I can do any day. The only reason why I told you Tuesday, Thursday, so you can get more traffic. Why? Because Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I can do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But there's someone else that goes live, Avery, at the time you want it to go live, and it's like spiritual blood fest where he challenges people.
Okay,
so
let's do the 2 Thursdays from now instead of the next Thursday, the other Thursday.
Okay, so I'll see what day the Thursday is after the 17th, and I'll let you know.
All right,
because I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Okay.
All right, I love you guys. God bless you guys. Pray for us. Pray for them.
God bless, Sam. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye-bye.
How do you